Chapter 1, The Warning No One Wanted to Hear. The first sign that something was wrong came from a star system that simply stopped talking. HFY was a thriving colony on the edge of the Perseus Corridor, home to nearly 4 billion citizens and one of the busiest trade hubs in the region. Hundreds of ships entered and departed every day. Then, without explanation, every signal vanished. No distress call. No emergency beacon. Nothing. At first, Galactic Council officials blamed a communications failure. Such outages were rare but not unheard of. A patrol fleet was dispatched to investigate. 3 days later, that fleet disappeared as well. Concern spread quickly. A second task force entered the system under strict military protocols. Its commander, Captain Rel Varon, expected piracy or sabotage. What he found made no sense. HFY visual confirmed, his sensor officer reported. The planet appeared untouched. Its orbital stations remained in position. Power grids still glowed across the night side. Automated traffic systems continued functioning. Yet there were no life signs. Not one. Rel stared at the tactical display. Run the scan again. The officer swallowed. I already did. A chill settled over the bridge. Cities covered entire continents, but every street was empty. Every building was silent. Every habitat showed the same result. Billions had vanished. Then the sensors detected movement. Thousands of objects emerged from deep space beyond the system's outer boundary. The shapes were unlike any known spacecraft. Black. Organic. Vast. The transmission ended abruptly. That final recording reached Earth 6 days later. Inside the United Earth Defense Fleet Command Center, analysts replayed the footage repeatedly. The room remained silent. No one could explain what they were seeing. At the center of the command platform stood Admiral Evelyn Hayes. 47 years old, composed under pressure, and known for making decisions others avoided, she watched the recording without blinking. The black vessels moved like a living organism rather than a fleet. They advanced with terrifying precision. When the footage ended, Hayes turned toward her intelligence director. What do we know? Very little, he admitted. 3 systems have gone dark in the last 2 months. HFY is the first confirmed investigation. 3 systems don't disappear by accident. No, Admiral. Hayes folded her arms. Find every unexplained loss along the frontier. I want trade records, sensor archives, civilian reports, everything. Within hours, hundreds of analysts began searching. The results were alarming. The missing systems formed a pattern. One by one, worlds along the galactic rim had vanished. Not conquered. Not destroyed. Consumed. As new data arrived, researchers calculated movement trajectories. The unknown force was advancing steadily toward populated Council territory. The projected path crossed dozens of major sectors. A briefing was scheduled immediately. Scientists, military officers, and diplomats gathered around a holographic display showing the expanding threat. Professor Malik Wren pointed toward the model. If current estimates are correct, these disappearances are connected. Connected by what? A diplomat asked. We don't know. Hayes studied the projection. Then give it a name. The room fell quiet. After a moment, Wren spoke. The Void Swarm. No one objected. The name fit too well. Over the following weeks, evidence continued mounting. Every calculation suggested the same conclusion. The threat was real. And it was coming. Earth submitted a request for an emergency session before the Galactic Council. Many politicians opposed the decision. Humanity had been a council member for less than 2 centuries. The elder civilizations often viewed humans as ambitious newcomers trying to prove themselves. One senator voiced what many feared. They'll laugh at us. Hayes looked directly at him. Maybe. And if they ignore the warning? Then we've done our duty. The senator shook his head. You really think they'll listen? Hayes glanced toward the star map projected above the chamber. The glowing trail of vanished systems stretched across the darkness like a wound. I think millions of lives may depend on whether they do. Several days later, Earth's delegation arrived at the Galactic Council Citadel. The station dwarfed entire moons. Ancient species had governed from its halls for millions of years. Human representatives were little more than minor participants among giants. The council chamber itself resembled a vast amphitheater. Delegates from hundreds of civilizations occupied tiered platforms overlooking the central floor. Hayes stepped forward as the session began. Every eye turned toward her. The presentation started. Sensor recordings. Star charts. Fleet losses. Predicted invasion routes. One by one, the evidence appeared above the chamber. The atmosphere remained attentive at first. Then skepticism emerged. A few delegates exchanged amused glances. Others whispered among themselves. Hayes ignored them and continued. The void swarm has already consumed multiple inhabited systems. If immediate preparations are not made, entire sectors may be lost. Before she could continue, a delegate interrupted. Consumed? Laughter echoed from several platforms. Another representative leaned forward. A young species discovers an anomaly and suddenly predicts galactic catastrophe. More amusement followed. Hayes remained still. The evidence speaks for itself. High Chancellor Vorex Tau finally rose from his seat. His voice carried across the chamber. The Council appreciates humanity's concern. The wording alone told Hayes everything. But extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. A murmur of agreement followed. Vorex gestured toward the projections. At present, the Council finds no justification for mass mobilization. The request was denied. Just like that. As the delegates dispersed, conversations resumed as though nothing important had happened. Hayes watched them leave. Then her communicator chimed. An urgent message flashed across the screen. Another frontier system had gone silent. This one was significantly closer to core territory. Hayes stared at the alert for a long second. The invasion had already begun. Chapter 2, When the Giants Fell. The galaxy continued as if nothing had happened. Trade convoys crossed thousands of star systems. Council politicians debated budgets and regulations. News networks discussed economic forecasts and cultural festivals. Only humanity seemed unable to move on. Back on Earth, Admiral Evelyn Hayes ignored the Council's dismissal and prepared for the worst. Orbital shipyards expanded production schedules. Reserve fleets were reactivated. Military simulations ran around the clock. Frontier colonies strengthened defenses despite criticism from leaders who believed resources were being wasted. Many still hoped the threat would never appear. Then it did. The first major attack came in the Taurus sector. Home to one of the oldest civilizations in the Galactic Council, the sector was protected by a fleet that had defended its borders for thousands of years. The Taurus regarded themselves as masters of warfare. Their military academies were studied across known space. When long-range sensors detected the approaching void swarm, confidence remained high. Grand Marshal Serac addressed the media before deployment. We have faced pirates, empires, rebellions, and invasions. This enemy will fare no better. His words spread throughout the council. Billions watched. The Taurus fleet entered battle less than 20 hours later. At first, everything appeared normal. Thousands of warships formed perfect attack formations. Energy lances illuminated the darkness. Coordinated strikes tore through the leading wave of black vessels. Celebrations began before the battle was even finished. Then the situation changed. The swarm adapted. Observers watched in disbelief as enemy formations shifted. Their movements became increasingly precise. They anticipated firing patterns before weapons discharged. Entire Taurus battle groups found themselves surrounded. Communication channels erupted with confusion. Enemy units are altering vectors. They're inside our defense perimeter. How are they predicting our maneuvers? Within minutes, carefully organized formations collapsed. Hours later, the Taurus fleet ceased to exist. The destruction shocked the galaxy. News channels replayed the battle endlessly. One of the most powerful militaries in known space had been erased. Panic followed. Citizens rushed evacuation centers. Governments closed borders. Insurance markets crashed. The council assured everyone the situation remained under control. Nobody believed them. The attacks continued. System after system disappeared. Entire populations fled ahead of the advancing darkness. Refugee armadas clogged trade routes. Emergency shelters overflowed. Military commanders demanded answers that no one possessed. At the Council Citadel, High Chancellor Vorex Tau struggled to maintain order. Every emergency session became more hostile than the last. Delegates shouted over one another. Accusations filled the chamber. What happened to our fleets? Why weren't we warned? How many systems have been lost? Vorex had no satisfactory response. Because he knew exactly who had warned them. Humanity. The realization spread quietly at first. Archived recordings from Admiral Hayes' presentation began circulating among military analysts. Every prediction matched reality. The vanished systems. The invasion route. The scale of the threat. Everything. Soon the recordings reached the public. Questions turned into outrage. Why had the warning been ignored? Why had preparation been delayed? Why had arrogance been allowed to outweigh evidence? Meanwhile, Earth continued gathering data. Hayes spent countless hours studying battle reports. Unlike most council leaders, she focused less on losses and more on patterns. One evening, her intelligence team assembled around a tactical display. Dozens of failed engagements rotated above the table. A young analyst pointed toward several highlighted regions. We found something. Hayes looked up. Show me. The swarm learns. The room fell silent. The analyst expanded several battle recordings. The Taurus used formations unchanged for centuries. The swarm adapted. Another example appeared. A second fleet relied on predictable defensive doctrine. Same outcome. Hayes narrowed her eyes. They're studying their opponents. Exactly. A colonel folded his arms. Then why haven't they overwhelmed everyone already? The analyst exchanged glances with his team. Because adaptation takes time. Understanding spread across the room. Humanity's military operated differently. Strategies evolved constantly. Commanders challenged established methods. Training emphasized flexibility rather than tradition. For the first time since discovering the swarm, Hayes saw a possible weakness. Not a guarantee. A chance. Nothing more. Then disaster struck again. The Veyron core sector fell. Unlike previous losses, this region sat near the heart of Council territory. Billions died within days. The event shattered any remaining confidence. Emergency alarms echoed throughout the Citadel. Delegates who once mocked humanity demanded immediate action. An emergency summit was announced. This time the invitation to Earth carried none of the previous condescension. When Hayes arrived, the atmosphere felt completely different. The vast council chamber remained packed, yet the mood had changed. Fear had replaced arrogance. No one laughed. No one whispered. No one questioned why she was there. High Chancellor Vorex stood as she entered. The gesture alone revealed how desperate circumstances had become. For several moments, silence filled the chamber. Finally, Vorex spoke. "Admiral Hayes." His voice lacked its former certainty. "We require your assessment." Hayes looked around the room. The same leaders who had dismissed her warning now waited for guidance. She activated a holographic projection of the advancing front. "The enemy is not unstoppable," she said calmly. Hope flickered across several faces. Then she continued. "But you've been fighting the wrong war." The chamber became utterly still. "The Void Swarm defeats you because you behave exactly as it expects." No one argued. No one interrupted. For the first time since the crisis began, the galaxy was ready to listen. And far beyond known space, the darkness continued moving toward the galactic core. Chapter 3, Humanity Stands Up. The emergency summit lasted 11 hours. Arguments erupted, alliances fractured, and centuries of political pride collided with the reality of extinction. By the end, the decision was made. Reluctantly. Uneasily. Humanity would assume operational command of the Coalition fleet. The announcement sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Many military leaders were furious. Ancient civilizations that had ruled star systems before humanity had discovered electricity now found themselves taking orders from a species barely 2 centuries into council membership. Several admirals openly protested. One of them, Commander Velker of the Hesh Dominion, stood during the final session. "This is madness," he said. "You expect fleets with thousands of years of combat history to follow human leadership?" Admiral Evelyn Hayes met his stare. "No," she replied calmly. "I expect fleets that want to survive to work together." The chamber fell silent. Nobody had a better alternative. The enemy continued advancing. Within days, Coalition forces began gathering at the Orion Gateway, a strategic junction connecting dozens of heavily populated sectors. If the Void Swarm captured it, the road to the galactic core would lie open. Most commanders anticipated a conventional defense. Hayes had different plans. Inside the Coalition Command Center, a three-dimensional battlefield projection rotated slowly above a circular table. Alien officers watched as she outlined her strategy. "No fixed battle lines," she said. Several eyebrows rose. "No defensive wall. No. No primary formation. No." Confusion spread immediately. One admiral shook his head. "Then what exactly are we doing?" Hayes enlarged the map. "We're becoming unpredictable." The display broke apart into hundreds of independent task groups. Instead of concentrating forces in a single location, Coalition ships dispersed throughout the system. Ambush positions appeared near asteroid fields. Strike groups hid behind moons. Reserve forces moved constantly. The arrangement looked chaotic. To traditional military minds, it seemed reckless. To Hayes, it was exactly what the situation required. "The swarm learns patterns," she explained. "Stop giving it patterns." The room became quiet. For the first time, several commanders began understanding her approach. 3 days later, the enemy arrived. Thousands of black vessels emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Orion Gateway. The sight froze many observers. Even after months of war, the scale remained horrifying. The swarm advanced immediately. As expected, enemy formations searched for centralized defenses. They found none. Instead, isolated coalition groups appeared throughout the system. The swarm divided its forces to pursue them. That was the moment Hayes had been waiting for. Execute Phase 1. Her order echoed across hundreds of command channels. The scattered fleet suddenly came alive. Hidden strike groups emerged from concealment. Missile salvos erupted from unexpected angles. Energy batteries opened fire from prepared positions. Every attack targeted isolated enemy clusters. The swarm reacted quickly. But not quickly enough. For the first time since the war began, coalition forces controlled the pace of battle. Hours passed. Then an astonishing development appeared on tactical displays. Enemy formations were retreating. Not regrouping. Retreating. A stunned officer looked toward Hayes. They're pulling back. I can see that. We've never seen this before. Neither had anyone else. News spread throughout the galaxy within minutes. The impossible had happened. The Void Swarm had suffered its first major defeat. Celebrations erupted across countless worlds. For many citizens, hope returned for the first time in months. The victory changed more than public morale. It changed perceptions. Alien commanders who had viewed humanity as inexperienced newcomers began paying attention. Respect replaced skepticism. Results were difficult to argue with. Over the following weeks, coalition operations expanded. Human officers coordinated rescue missions throughout endangered sectors. Convoys escorted refugees to safety. Joint fleets liberated trapped colonies. Species that had distrusted one another for generations suddenly found themselves fighting side by side. A new sense of unity began emerging. The war remained brutal, but something important had changed. The galaxy was finally acting like a single civilization. Then came the discovery. During an operation near the former Taurus frontier, coalition forces captured an intact swarm vessel. Scientists and military analysts worked around the clock examining its systems. The findings were disturbing. Hayes received the report aboard her flagship. She read it twice before speaking. Are we certain? The lead researcher nodded. We've verified everything. A holographic image appeared above the briefing table. At first glance, it resembled a neural network stretching across light years of space. The fleets attacking us aren't operating independently, the researcher explained. They're connected. To what? The scientist enlarged a distant region beyond known space. A central intelligence. The room became still. Every battle. Every adaptation. Every tactical response. All directed from a single source. The implications were obvious. Destroying individual fleets would never end the war. The mind controlling them had to be eliminated. Hayes leaned back slowly. Can we reach it? The scientist hesitated. Yes. And if we destroy it? The swarm may collapse. A long silence followed. May. Not will. May. Yet it was the first genuine opportunity anyone had found. Preparations began immediately. Messages spread throughout the coalition. Every surviving civilization contributed ships. Every available resource was committed. The resulting fleet became the largest assembly of military power in galactic history. Thousands of vessels gathered near the frontier. On the eve of departure, Hayes addressed commanders from across the galaxy. Faces from dozens of species appeared on the communication network. Many knew they would never return. Hayes looked at them for a moment before speaking. This mission isn't about territory. The room remained silent. It isn't about politics, status, or history. She paused. It's about giving every child in this galaxy a future. No dramatic cheers followed. No grand celebration. Only quiet determination. The kind forged by sacrifice. Hours later, the coalition fleet entered uncharted space. Stars thinned. Darkness deepened. Far ahead, sensor arrays detected movement. Then more movement. Then countless signals. Entire walls of enemy vessels emerged from the void. The final battle had found them first. Chapter 4, The Day Humanity Earned the Stars. The coalition fleet emerged from hyperspace into a region no civilization had ever charted. Silence greeted them. Not the ordinary quiet of space, but something deeper. Something unsettling. Ahead stretched a structure so immense that sensor systems struggled to measure it. Vast networks of dark organic matter surrounded a glowing core larger than a star. Countless tendrils extended outward into the void like the roots of a cosmic tree. The Swarm Nexus. The mind behind the war. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then every alarm aboard Admiral Evelyn Hayes' flagship activated at once. Enemy contacts flooded tactical displays. Thousands. Then tens of thousands. Then more. The darkness surrounding the Nexus came alive. The final battle had begun. All fleets advance, Hayes ordered. Across the formation, coalition vessels accelerated. Energy beams illuminated space. Missiles streaked forward. Fighter squadrons launched from carriers belonging to dozens of species. The swarm responded immediately. Black ships surged toward the coalition like a tidal wave. The collision shook the battlefield. Entire formations disappeared in moments. Explosions flashed across the darkness. Command channels filled with reports. Port flank taking heavy losses. Enemy breakthrough detected. Medical ships requesting escort. Hayes absorbed the information without panic. Years of experience allowed her to focus on the objective rather than the chaos. Destroy the Nexus. Everything else was secondary. Hours passed. The coalition advanced steadily but paid a terrible price. Every kilometer gained cost ships. Every opening was met with fierce resistance. The swarm protected its center with absolute determination. Inside the command center, a tactical officer turned pale while examining new data. Admiral. Hayes looked up. What is it? The Nexus is preparing something. A projection appeared. Energy readings throughout the structure were rising rapidly. Scientists analyzed the information and reached a horrifying conclusion. The Nexus was coordinating a galaxy-wide assault. If activated, every remaining swarm fleet would launch simultaneous attacks. The coalition would never stop them all. Time had run out. Hayes studied the tactical display. Conventional strategies were failing. The defenses surrounding the Nexus remained intact. Only one possibility remained. She knew it immediately. So did everyone else in the room. The silence became heavy. Finally, Hayes spoke. We need a breakthrough force. Nobody asked what that meant. The route to the Nexus passed through the strongest concentration of enemy vessels on the battlefield. The chances of survival were almost non-existent. Before Hayes could continue, a transmission arrived. Commander Velker appeared on the screen. The same officer who had once opposed human leadership now looked directly into the camera. My fleet volunteers. Hayes stared at him. You understand the risk. I do. More requests followed. One after another. Taurus warships. Hesh cruisers. Veyron strike groups. Dozens of commanders offered their fleets. Former rivals. Former enemies. Now united. A faint smile touched Hayes' face. The galaxy had changed. Very well, she said. Let's finish this. The breakthrough force accelerated. Human vessels led the charge. Coalition ships followed closely behind. The attack punched directly into the densest enemy defenses. The battle became savage. Every kilometer forward triggered another wave of resistance. Ships vanished under concentrated fire. Others rammed enemy formations when weapons failed. Still they advanced. Slowly. Relentlessly. The path to the Nexus began opening. A damaged cruiser exploded near Hayes' flagship. Shockwaves rattled the hull. Warning lights flooded the bridge. Structural integrity dropping. Maintain course, Hayes replied. The Nexus filled the forward display. For the first time, victory seemed possible. Then another obstacle emerged. A final defensive barrier surrounded the core. Everything depended on breaking through it. Hayes made her decision. Transfer all remaining power to the primary weapon. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. One officer spoke quietly. "If we do that, we'll lose shields." "I know." The order was executed. The flagship surged forward. Enemy fire hammered the hull. Systems failed throughout the vessel. Sections of the ship went dark. Nobody abandoned their station. The distance continued shrinking. Finally, the targeting system locked onto the core. Weapon ready. Hayes looked at the enormous structure dominating the screen. Months earlier, humanity had stood alone. Now the entire galaxy stood beside them. Fire. A brilliant beam erupted from the flagship. It crossed the darkness and struck the center of the nexus. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the structure began to fracture. Light spread through enormous cracks. The glow intensified. The entire battlefield froze. Suddenly, the nexus exploded. The shockwave expanded across millions of kilometers. Every remaining swarm vessel stopped moving. Command signals vanished. Formations collapsed. The enemy had lost its mind. The war was over. Months later, reconstruction efforts stretched across the galaxy. Worlds were rebuilt. Refugees returned home. Trade routes reopened. For the first time in years, hope replaced fear. The Galactic Council gathered once more. This time the atmosphere felt different. When Admiral Hayes entered the chamber, every delegate stood. Not because protocol required it. Because respect demanded it. High Chancellor Vorex Tal stepped forward. Age seemed heavier on him now. "We failed to listen," he said openly. "Humanity warned us. We ignored that warning." The chamber remained silent. Vorex lowered his head. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer our apology." No laughter followed. No pride remained. Only truth. Humanity was granted permanent leadership status within the Council. Yet the title mattered less than what it represented. Recognition. Trust. A place earned through sacrifice rather than politics. As the ceremony concluded, Hayes looked around the chamber. Species from every corner of the galaxy stood together. Different histories. Different cultures. One future. The galaxy would remember ancient empires, legendary rulers, and countless wars. But when darkness threatened every star, it was humanity that stood up first, and showed everyone else how.